The woman was having an affair with her husband's friend, while that man was secretly dating her husband's younger sister. Even more shocking, the two of them joined forces to murder the woman's husband, and behind it all, there seemed to be an unspeakable secret hidden beneath the surface. One day, the mystery-loving Hajime and Miyuki traveled to the countryside to visit their classmate Aki at her home. Aki's father Fuyuo was a famous pottery master, but earlier that spring, Fuyuo suddenly smashed his most prized masterpiece, Autumn Cicada, into pieces. Not long afterward, he took his own life. To outsiders, it was an extremely bizarre incident, but for the family, Fuyuo's death was something they could completely understand. According to Aki, her father had always been a cold and ruthless man. In order to create art, there was nothing he would not do, and Autumn Cicada had originally been the most perfect work he had ever created, but perfection also meant there was nothing left to surpass. Little by little, Fuyuo began to hate the masterpiece he once loved the most, and when that hatred finally reached its peak, destruction became inevitable. Afterward, Aki brought Hajime and Miyuki into the living room. There, she introduced them to her stepmother Hazuki and her younger stepsister Shigeru. Hazuki had married Aki's father 3 years earlier. Shigeru was the daughter she had brought with her at the time, so Shigeru and Aki were not blood-related. Shigeru also had a gloomy personality. She spent nearly all of her time locked away in her room. Aki's aunt Haruko was extremely domineering. She had previously been living in Tokyo and had only recently moved back. Haruko always treated Hazuki and Shigeru like outsiders. She was openly hostile toward them. At that moment, Hajime and Aki were chatting inside the house, when Haruko's voice suddenly echoed from outside. She ordered Shigeru to go fetch a bucket of water, but Shigeru completely ignored the command and calmly continued painting. Shigeru was extraordinarily talented when it came to art. Fuyuo had even passed his secret pottery techniques onto her, something he had never done for anyone else. When Haruko saw Shigeru ignoring her, she immediately began shouting insults at her. Hazuki quickly rushed over and apologized on Shigeru's behalf. Only then did Haruko leave while still grumbling angrily to herself. During the lunch break, Hajime suddenly heard strange noises coming from the room next door. Curious, he pressed himself against the door to eavesdrop, but he accidentally lost his balance and fell inside. When he looked up, he discovered Aki's stepmother together with an unfamiliar man. Hazuki introduced the man as one of Fuyuo's old friends. His name was Muto, and he was an entomologist. Recently, he had been staying at Fuyuo's house as a guest. Muto invited Hajime to come see his collection, but just as they stepped outside, a massive black storm cloud rolled toward them. Earlier, Aki had explained that the village sat inside a basin surrounded by mountains. Because of that, thunderstorms struck almost every single day. For this reason, the village even held a special ceremony dedicated to thunderstorms. It was known as the Thunder Festival. At that moment, Muto suddenly became extremely nervous. He immediately removed his belt and threw it onto the ground. Muto explained that his uncle had once been struck by lightning and severely injured. Ever since then, he had developed a deep fear of thunderstorms. Whenever stormy weather approached, he always removed every metal object from his body. As he spoke, Muto invited Hajime into his room. Inside, Hajime saw countless cicada specimens on display. Muto explained to him that preserved cicada shells were also known as utsasimi. Fuyuo's greatest masterpiece, Autumn Cicada, had been inspired by them. Hajime could clearly tell how proud Muto was of that fact. Just then, Hazuki entered carrying tea. A few moments later, Haruko also walked into the room. In a mocking tone, she sarcastically implied that Hazuki and Muto were having an affair. Muto immediately stood up and argued back. Haruko slapped him across the face without hesitation. Before turning around and leaving, Hazuki stepped forward to tend to Muto's wound. Muto then gently grabbed her arm, and this entire scene was seen by everyone. Hazuki quietly told him that she would bring him dinner at 7 p.m. At 4 p.m. that afternoon, the annual Thunder Festival was about to begin. Aki explained to them that once lightning struck one of the 7 sacred Zelkova trees, it would signal the official start of the festival. For the past 300 years, every Thunder Festival had always been accompanied by lightning striking one of the sacred trees. It was considered nothing short of miraculous. At that moment, Aki suddenly realized Shigeru still had not shown up, so she went back to look for her. But shortly after she left, the sky erupted with thunder and lightning. The Thunder Festival had officially begun. Everyone in the village stood beneath the pouring rain, joyfully bathing in what they believed was heaven's blessing. But Miyuki, terrified of the storm, hid nervously inside the pavilion, waiting for Hajime to return from the restroom. At that moment, Haruko walked over. She claimed that only people born in this village are not afraid of thunder. Meanwhile, Hajime, returning from the restroom, happened to encounter Shigeru. Shigeru pulled him into another pavilion to talk. By chance, they saw a cicada struggling to break out of its shell. Hajime said that a cicada larva spends 7 years underground before finally emerging into the world. But after that, it only lives for about 2 weeks. Listening to his words, Shigeru's brows revealed a faint sadness. Then she turned to Hajime and gave a small smile, saying it felt like an unbelievable ritual. The heavy rain quickly passed. Everyone soon gathered again. After spending some time on the mountain, they returned to the house around 7 p.m., but the moment they entered, a scream came from Muto's room. Everyone rushed over in panic. At the stone steps, Hajime suddenly stopped. He noticed something unusual. Between the main house and Muto's room, there were 2 lines of footprints. To avoid disturbing them, Hajime decided to walk alone. At the entrance, he saw 2 pairs of shoes, 1 pair of men's wooden clogs, and 1 pair of women's sandals. In the umbrella stand nearby, there was a light blue umbrella. Food had been prepared on the dining table. A clock on the desk showed 7 p.m. Muto was slumped against the bed, already without breath. But what was even more bizarre was this. His body was covered in countless cicada shells. It looked like some kind of ritual burial. Like a curse, a murder had occurred. Inspector Nagashima arrived at the scene. According to the forensic examination, Muto had been killed by a blow from an ashtray. The estimated time of death was between 5 o'clock and 5:30 p.m. The police compared the shoes with the footprints. They quickly confirmed that the 2 sets of footprints matched the shoes left at the entrance. 1 pair belonged to Muto, so the suspect seemed obvious. Because around 5 p.m., everyone except Hazuki had been on the mountain for the Thunder Festival. That meant only Hazuki could have committed the murder. Faced with police accusations, Hazuki did not offer much resistance. She simply told Shigeru to take care of her health and remember to take her medicine. Then she left with the police. That night, Hajime noticed a flickering light in the courtyard. He rushed over and rescued a letter from the burning bucket. It contained a message written by Fuyuo. It read that until he created a work surpassing Autumn Cicada, he could not die. Only then did Hajime realize Fuyuo had not committed suicide. He must have been murdered. At that moment, Miyuki approached him. The two discussed the case. Hajime deduced that Hazuki was likely not the killer. First, there were 2 sets of footprints on the ground. Muto's footprints were deeper, which suggested he had walked during rain or just after it stopped. Muto's time of death was around 5 p.m. Hazuki had no reason to kill him at that time, and then remain at the scene until after 7 p.m. She looked more like someone who had just arrived at the crime scene. Also, Muto was killed by an ashtray. That suggested the murder was a sudden impulse, but the killer used a certain method to escape without leaving footprints, and the killer must have heard that Hazuki would bring dinner at 7 p.m., so the murder was deliberately framed on her. Hazuki believed the culprit must be one of the women in Fuyuo's household. The next day, Hajime and Inspector Nagashima returned to the crime scene. Hajime noticed something strange. The umbrella that had been placed at the entrance the day before was now inside Muto's room. Nagashima suggested that Muto might have used it during the rain. Then Hajime noticed something else. The glass jar that had once been filled with utsasimi was now completely clean. Connecting all the clues, Hajime finally understood the truth. He asked Nagashima to gather everyone together. He was going to reveal the truth. Once everyone had assembled, Hajime stated that the murderer was not Hazuki, but someone else entirely. Nagashima was confused. How could the footprints be explained, and everyone else had perfect alibis? Hajime stepped outside. He said the ground was completely dry now, meaning no footprints could form under normal conditions. But in reality, the killer had already murdered Muto before the rain started at 5 p.m. Hajime asked Shigeru to bring a rubber hose. He attached it to a faucet and sprayed water across the ground. The entire surface became wet. At that moment, Miyuki seemed to understand as well. She walked from the main house to Muto's room. On the wet ground, she left a clear set of footprints. Then she returned to the main house. On the dry ground, a faint second set of footprints also appeared. Hajime concluded that the killer had left 2 sets of footprints before the rain began. When it started raining at 5 p.m., the footprints on dry ground disappeared, while the ones on wet ground remained. Then the killer wore Muto's shoes and left another set of footprints, creating the illusion that Muto had arrived during the rain. Hajime then brought everyone into Muto's room. He picked up the umbrella, and pointed to the metal part of its handle. The killer wanted to make it look like Muto had come here during the rain with an umbrella, but in reality, Muto was extremely afraid of lightning. Someone like him would never voluntarily walk outside holding an umbrella during a thunderstorm. The killer completely failed to understand how terrifying thunder could be for someone with that fear. And the only people who would naturally not understand that fear were those who grew up in this village and were already used to thunderstorms. So the killer was Haruko. Haruko immediately denied everything. She argued that Shigeru was not originally from the village either. Yet she also showed no fear of thunderstorms. Hajime replied that the truth lay with the glass jar inside the room. After the murderer killed Muto, why would they cover the body with such a huge number of Utsusimi shells? At first glance, it looked like some kind of cursed ritual killing, but in reality, the killer's true purpose was to conceal the fact that they had used the glass jar. That jar had originally been filled with Utsusimi. Naturally, small fragments and residue should have remained inside, but now the jar was unnaturally clean. Hajime theorized that the killer had filled the jar with water and then poured the water onto the ground to create fake footprints and mislead the police. And the reason the murderer did not use a bucket or a hose was because they did not know where those tools were kept. Before the incident, Haruko had specifically ordered Shigeru to fetch a bucket and hose for her. Everyone who lived in the house knew where the tools were stored. Only Haruko, who had recently moved back, would not know their location. Every clue pointed directly toward Haruko. This time, Haruko did not try to deny it again. She admitted that she was the murderer. She confessed that she and Muto had once been lovers, but later, he had fallen in love with Hazuki instead. Consumed by jealousy and hatred, she killed Muto, and with that, the entire case appeared to be solved. But Hajime still felt that something was not right. Several days later, Inspector Nagashima came to see Hajime. He explained that Muto had 3 separate wounds on his head, and the fatal injury was not the one inflicted by Haruko. Furthermore, during the argument between Haruko and Muto, Muto had shoved her into a nearby table. She lost consciousness for 5 or 6 minutes afterward. After hearing Nagashima's explanation, Hajime fell silent for a few seconds. Then he finally understood everything. The real murderer had killed Muto during the short period when Haruko was unconscious. At that moment, Hajime also realized who the true killer really was, but it was already too late, because the real murderer, Shigeru, had already passed away due to her illness. Several days later, Hajime met with Shigeru's mother Hazuki. Only then did he finally learn the complete truth behind everything. It turned out that Fuyuo had not committed suicide at all. He had been killed by Hazuki, and the reason she had come there now was to turn herself in. Fuyuo was an emotionally unstable man, with an overwhelming desire to control everyone around him. Hazuki and Shigeru had lived every single day in fear. One day, Fuyuo discovered Shigeru's incredible artistic talent. He ordered Shigeru to try making pottery. Before long, Shigeru presented the finished piece to him. The moment Fuyuo saw the flawless work she had created, he was completely stunned. He instantly realized that one day Shigeru would surpass him completely. Driven mad by jealousy, Fuyuo suddenly lunged at Shigeru, intending to kill her. At that critical moment, Hazuki arrived just in time. She grabbed a nearby fire poker and drove it straight into Fuyuo's throat. But unfortunately, Muto witnessed the entire thing. Muto promised not to expose the truth, and even helped stage the scene to look like a suicide. However, he demanded one condition in return. Hazuki had to become his woman. Shigeru could not bear to watch her mother suffer under Muto's control. So after witnessing the fight between Haruko and Muto, she immediately rushed into the room and struck Muto to death with the ashtray. Afterward, she deliberately framed Haruko for the murder, but unknown to her, Hazuki had seen everything. Since the day she was born, Shigeru had suffered from a severe illness. Doctors had long ago declared that she would never live to adulthood. For most of her life, she remained trapped inside a dark room, surrounded by medicine day after day. And that summer, the doctors finally announced that she would not survive past the season. So during the little time she had left, she wanted to truly live for once. She stepped out from the suffocating darkness of her room, embraced the sunlight, and used the very last moments of her life to protect her mother,